I've lived in New Jersey my entire life, and I know lots of interesting people. Artists, musicians, actors, business owners, and politicians. So my goal is to introduce some of the most interesting people who have ties to New Jersey. Either they live here, they work here, they went to school here, whatever tie I can think of. Many of these people are not well known even in New Jersey, but I'm going to change that because I'm Lucille Losapio, and this is Not So Famous in New Jersey. A lot of people look forward and think about how much time they have left. Other people look back and relish what's happened in their life. What kind of a person is Tim McLoone? Well, those are some of the things we talk about, including what it means to be pointy. But more importantly, Tim and I discuss how he literally broke the record for the National Guard. Stay tuned for part 2. I want to change the subject a little bit because I understand that you are actually almost a professional mechanic.
Totally untrue.
Come on, you were in the National Guard mechanics pool.
That's true. But what actually happened, I got drafted, and I was a school teacher. I was teaching 5th grade in Newark, and they ended the teacher deferments, and it's in the middle of Vietnam. So my father, who was a lifer in the Navy, interceded to get me into a National Guard unit. I had to do 6 years in the National Guard. To get in, you took whatever the heck you could get, and I was attached to the 253rd Motor Transport out of Seagirt, New Jersey. So I go to basic training. It was terrible. How much time do you have? I have no mechanical abilities whatsoever. But when you're first there for the first section, the first couple of months, you're just doing basic training. It's all physical. And then you go to what they call AIT, Advanced Infantry Training. But in my case, it was truck mechanic. So what happened there? I got so lucky. I apologize for this, but in our final physical tests, I set the Fort Dix record for the mile in combat boots. And it was pretty fast. Somebody noticed, and they assigned me to the gym. So I had the easiest second half of my basic training. I could actually sleep in a little bit, which meant I slept till like 8, wandered down to the mess hall for the end of breakfast, and then I'd go down to the gym. And I'd be in the gym every day, and if any officer came in and wanted to go for a run, or what I actually had to do was learn how to play handball, which was hard, because that's what they were playing back then. They wanted to play handball. And so when I came out, I had 0 training, and I get assigned to the motor pool. I always said that I was like the worst soldier ever, and that I did have to work in the motor pool, but I could just see some guy driving what we call deuce and a half trucks, 2.5-ton trucks, going down a hill saying, "What the hell's wrong with these brakes?"
McLoone must have worked on them.
That would be me. I had no abilities whatsoever, and I stay with that to this very day. I actually put air in one of my tires yesterday by myself.
Hey, wow.
By myself. The things that I know and the stuff that I don't know is this. I mean, most people my age, we all have the same recollection that we know baseball players from the 50s. And the other night we were playing at the supper club, and somebody passed a note up for something I literally have not played in 40 years, 40 years.
Wow.
And I played it and knew the words. I think that's so strange. I'm in a study group called Aging Athletes. Everybody's over 70. It's not very many of us. It's like a dozen. And this one man that's running it started it he wanted to actually literally do a study of people that were once allegedly elite athletes. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the least accomplished of all the athletes in this group, but I was good.
But I did set the record. You broke the record at Fort Dix. Yeah.
But it's basically what happens to you physically in life. Do you stay with it or whatever? And we read books for each monthly meeting. A lot of them are just about cognitive decline. The one we're reading right now is actually literally called Memory.
But you don't remember what's in it.
Yeah, right. What you get out of it basically is that when people are worried that they can't remember where they parked their car or where their keys are, it doesn't mean that you have Alzheimer's or anything else. What means if you don't remember that you have a car.
Or like what a car is for.
Yes, that's when you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
But it's that you memorialize certain moments in your life.
Like I remember the conversation we had on the way to go smoke pot for the first time.
That was before you got arrested, right?
Yeah, I actually was never arrested. They never caught me. I still to this day have this, I got to hide that. Oh, no, I don't. I don't have to hide my pot anymore.
But that's so funny you said that, because another memory for me was like I was talking to somebody I went to college with, and I said, yeah, I was in Kirkland House L22. And he goes, you remember the number of your college room? But yeah, I don't know. Why would you not?
Right. Like, where did you go to college?
Harvard of all places.
Excuse me.
Exactly.
Harvard.
Yeah. I try to keep people from knowing. You learn that early on.
People always have ways to describe us. I want you to tell me 5 adjectives that people use to describe you.
Oh, what they say
What
to
they
me?
say about you. You know, like they would say Tim is...
Actually, most times I hear Tim's nice. I also hear I'm aloof. That's the one that bothers me. It has stuck with me, you know? I don't know. Generous. I hear a lot just basically that I'm a good person, which to me is hilarious. I mean, yeah, I do. Well, you know, I do some good stuff. I don't know. I don't hear creative a lot. I'd like to hear creative more.
Do you think that they're pretty accurate in the way they describe you?
I think so. I've learned to be drawn to people who are disabled. Yesterday at the high school I coach at, there is a young girl.
And which high school is that?
Rumson Fairhaven. There's a girl in a wheelchair who I see every day. And yesterday I went over to talk to her because I can't help myself.
Yeah.
You know, through Holiday Express, we just finished our 30th year and we had the door opened that I never knew existed. My brother's firstborn Stephen was 100% spastic, as they would say back in that day. Cerebral palsy, breech birth, no oxygen for 45 seconds, whatever it took, and that was it. And an atomic bomb went off in that specific family unit, but it also into ours as well. And when I meet all these families now through Holiday Express, I understand.
Well,
what
you're
goes on.
empathetic. You can put yourself in their place.
Yeah. Ironically, it was the greatest day of my life physically, athletically. I ran 2 races that I'd never been able to do that before as my brother's life was crumbling. And I've kept that in mind. And there's this young woman now in my life named Lainey. And we used to go to, we still do go to a place called Blythedale Children's Hospital. In many cases, the worst of the worst. Children who've been beaten, battered, burned, shot by relatives alongside conjoined twins there who are conjoined at the head. And we just see everything.
Yeah.
And there was this young girl, Lainey, who I met when she was 5, and she's now 27, I think, just like my nephew Stephen. Cannot speak, is stuck in a wheelchair, stomach fed, no communication. So I would see them once a year on the same day, and I'd talk to Lainey's mom. So a couple of years ago, I said to her mother, I said, you know, this is crazy. You and I have great conversations. We rail about Trump or whatever we're talking about. You know, I said, we have all these conversations, and yet that's it. One day a year, here's my email address. If you ever just want to vent, you know, or whatever, get in touch. I don't hear anything for months. I get a message one day, and it says, hi, it's Lainey. Now, keep in mind that when I go to Blythedale and she sees me walk in the door, she gets really excited.
She recognizes
But
you.
there's another person named Rob Thomas who's like literally sold 100 million records worldwide. Mm-hmm. He comes in, she practically literally flips herself out of her chair. She gets so excited. So at any rate, I get this.
So you're no Rob Thomas.
Yeah, I'm no Rob. So I get, hi, it's Lainey. I write back, Lainey who? It comes back, Lainey from Blythedale, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, in caps. And I'm like, what? And so I write back, what's the matter? Rob Thomas won't answer your emails anymore? She writes back, ha ha. She got the joke. She got the joke. And this is a person who never spoke, never anything.
And just because
like
she can't speak doesn't mean her brain isn't working.
But
yeah.
we always wondered with my nephew who had passed a couple years earlier. So after this, we have some back and forth. And I said, if you don't mind me asking, how are you doing this? And she says, with my eyes. They have a laser, you know, remember I'm not the machinist. I didn't go to that thing in the Army. Well, I don't know how this works either. But that's how she does it. So we went up to her house. My daughter and I went, spent the day. Oh. So I'm getting ready to leave. And so I said to Lainey, all these years, you understood everything I was saying? And you hear the thing clicks a little bit. And then it came up, yep. Not yes. Yep. So we communicate pretty much every day.
Oh, that's
and
great.
Just little stuff, you know, it comes Lainey Pierce and then I see hi. I have to carry the conversation, unfortunately.
Well, right, because it takes a lot for her to...
It takes a lot.
Yeah.
She does it letter
Isn't that
by...
what Stephen Hawking does?
I think he did.
Yeah.
It's letter by letter.
Yeah,
you know. But he had a voice controller.
Right.
She does not have that. My whole point was being allowed into that world gave me access. And maybe I was prepared for it because of all those years at the Veterans Hospitals. I have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, I hate it when people say this, but it's truly been a blessing that I was allowed that entry into that world. You ever want to not feel sorry for yourself? Try that on.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you stuff that I don't usually talk about publicly, but our son Jack, who's now 27, got leukemia when he was 9. And it was a 3.5-year battle. And we were right in the middle of Holiday Express through all that. And I was like, if there was ever anybody prepared not to feel sorry for ourselves, it was my wife and I.
Yeah.
You couldn't have a moment of why us, because we had every reason to believe that he would literally and figuratively walk away from leukemia. And he was fortunate he did, unlike some. But the people we deal with, no, this
There's
is
no
it.
walking away.
This is who
from
you
it.
are,
Yeah.
for life.
My father was, I think it was because the way the doctor delivered him, his right arm was completely crippled.
Oh, really?
Couldn't use it at all. But I grew up with him being that. Like it almost didn't register until one time I was at a softball game. My father used to ump. And somebody said, "Oh, I didn't know your father was crippled." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Oh, yeah, he is." Until they said that, it just had never registered.
Now, how funny is it that he would take himself into umpiring?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
He can't do it, so he gets himself as close to the game as he can
Yeah.
get.
And he can also boss people around.
Yeah, well, that's where you got that.
And, yeah, right. And the thing is, my father did everything. My father was a milkman. He drove a stick shift truck.
Wow.
With his left hand, and he would trim our trees. He'd climb up the tree, with a ladder, trim it with one hand, jump down. I mean, we have a family movie of my father like climbing down from the tree, and he's hanging with his one arm, and then he jumps down. And my uncle would always like play it backwards, then show him jumping up into the tree. So that was the favorite thing in our home movies, is watching Dad jump up into a tree like a monkey. When he drove, he would like grab the inside of the wheel to turn it. When I took driver's ed, the driving instructor went nuts when I did that. No, hand over it. I'm like, why? My father does it this way.
That's hilarious.
Did you ever play the game Two Truths and a Lie?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to give me two truths and a lie about you, and I have to guess which one is the lie.
Well, you took away some of the
Well,
opportunity.
that's why I'm doing it now.
Oh, I hate this game.
Then never come to one of my parties, because we always play games at my parties.
This means I have to work. This just happened, and usually it's the stuff we've already talked about, that I was in the National Guard.
That you were a mechanic.
That I was a mechanic. My kids find out stuff about me every once in a while that entertains them, because I have had a bizarro life. Two truths and a lie. Well, the lie is that I'm enjoying this moment. You want that one?
That's...
I hate this moment. It calls upon me to be creative, and I don't know. Why am I fumbling on this?
I don't know.
And you didn't warn me.
This is I always want to get something that gets people thinking.
Because usually I got a real... Well, one truth is...
Well, don't tell me which ones are the truths.
Oh, I'm not
I have to guess which one is the lie.
Yeah, I ruined the game already. That which was my goal, actually. I don't know that I can handle this. Holiday Express started because I was getting a divorce.
Okay.
I mean, how easy am I trying to make this for you? I once got to play a song with Elvis Presley. And I once did an interview with Burt Bacharach.
You never got to do a song with Elvis Presley.
Yeah, I know. That was too easy.
An easy
Too
one.
easy.
Yeah.
It was really weird, the Burt Bacharach thing. When my friends in college were listening to The Temptations and the rest of it, I was listening to Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick. What a nerd. A couple of years ago, before he passed, a friend of mine, Rob Dye, who's well invested in the music business as well as being a player, he said, "How would you like to do an interview with Burt Bacharach?" I'm like, "What?" Now, it wasn't just me. There were a bunch of journalists. He was doing a new album, his last album. So I'm just on a Zoom call. But there he is, right? I mean, to me, it was like really weird. At the end of it, they say, "Okay, we've got time for one more question. Tim McLoone, do you have something you'd like to ask Burt Bacharach?" It's almost like you with this two truths. I have no idea, but I actually came up with a reasonable question. I asked the collaborator, I say, "Listen, when you were working with Mr. Bacharach, did you ever have a moment where he was saying something to you musically that you thoroughly disagreed with, but you thought to yourself,
I'm not going to say
he's Burt
that.
Bacharach?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Absolutely." But it scared the pants off me.
Like you're on the spot. When you were in your 20s, did you think that music might be your career?
Well, that's interesting. My dad, since we already said something that would have been one of my answers to, that I graduated from Harvard. That might have gotten you. I don't know. Yeah. You'd think he'd be brighter, wouldn't you?
Well, gentlemen C.
Yeah, C- actually. I found out what a C- is at Harvard, by the way, my freshman
20?
year.
No.
I was overwhelmed. I was taking calculus and physics in the morning, two things. I didn't take calculus in high school. So I walk into my very first class at Harvard, and I'm like, okay, the saying tabula rasa. It's a blank slate. I'm going to do this stuff. I've got fresh notebooks, pencils. And the guy says, okay, how many of you took calculus in prep school? He didn't say high school. He said prep school. All the hands go up except me and the eventual captain of the basketball team. And he goes, "All right, well, no big deal. I'm going to go slow. You guys, you can catch up, and the rest of the class, it'll be a nice little review for him." He walks over to the board and he goes, "If the coefficient of x is equal to the derivative of y, He's 14 words in. I am 3 months behind, and I never recovered. I got a 24 in the final.
And you had a C minus?
And he had to be thinking, he came to every class. He turned everything in. There's no reason to ruin this kid's life. He seems nice enough.
Or he must be mentally challenged.
Yeah, nice try on that one.
Yeah.
But that was, I don't even remember what the question was.
I was about whether you thought you were going to be a musician as a
my
career.
Parents, my dad used to always like to say, if we knew you were going to be going in the music business, I'm not sure we needed to send you to Harvard. What happened to me was actually my junior year there, they had a talent contest, and the Kirkland House annual talent contest. And there were people who were unbelievable. I mean, really, just superstars. And for whatever reason, I had the nerve. And I wasn't playing in a band or out in public or anything. I got up and I played 2 songs. Now Casablanca was the big movie at Harvard back then. It was a thing every year. They had the Casablanca. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew the words to everything in the song, and that was As Time Goes By.
Right.
So I got up and I played As Time Goes By, and that got everybody's. And then I did an Elvis song. I did Don't Be Cruel. And the reaction of the people there after they sat there listening to 2 hours of classical music was overwhelming. I went back to my room and I told my roommate, I was like, I don't believe what just happened to me. And that was it. That was the thing. I started chasing it. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Well, when did you decide you didn't want to live in poverty?
Yeah. Well, I opened a store,
the running store,
running
right?
store,
Yeah.
because I needed a side gig. I knew I needed something, so I opened that in 1976 because it just wasn't going to work musically. I think that was probably something I did wrong in a way, that I doubted myself to such a deep degree that I never forced myself through, and I was being a fraud because I was trying to be this jazz bow dude, because that seemed like that was a coming thing. We ended up being good friends years later with a guy named John Tropez, who was in the front of that. He was working with these great bands called Stuff, and Mike Guadagno would take me into New York City to see this guy, and I wanted to be that. Okay, I'm going to be that, and then I'm going to be a rock and roller, and then I'm going to do that. I wasn't going to be me. And the ironic part of all this stuff is that the pandemic comes. So I'm doing a 1-hour piano show from my living room on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays from 6 to 7 playing, quote, dinner music. But I meant that in quotes, dinner. And my wife would set up her phone, and then she'd leave because she'd heard it all before and had no interest. And it turned out that sometimes I would have like 30 people listening to it, sometimes 300 people listening to it.
Was that the Tim McLoone radio show?
Yeah. No. That was an actual over the airwaves.
Oh, okay.
This was during the pandemic. I was playing stuff and I had to relearn how to play solo piano because it's totally different. When you play solo, you got to cover everything. When you're in a band, you have to leave room for everybody. Mm-hmm. Don't play those bass notes because you got a guy playing bass,
right.
So I had to learn how to do that then, and now I had to unlearn it and play everything. And so I decided at one point I'm only going to play songs that I didn't play with my band. And it turned out I was a country singer. And I played songs that I wrote and stuff that I always liked that I never did. Huh. And there it was. And it matched my voice. It matched everything.
If you've listened to my podcast, and pretend you have if you haven't.
I'm addicted.
Yeah. you would know that I always ask singers to sing a song with me.
I don't.
So
this is as bad as the Two Truths and a Lie.
I know. I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions, but you can pick a different one if you want. We could do...
What do you got?
Twist and Shout.
I hate that one.
Okay. I Should Have Known Better by the Beatles. I know you hate this one. Mustang Sally.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Since my first wife's name was Sally.
I remember.
Oh, okay. At our wedding, Bob Bandiero was supposed to be the band, and then Southside got a gig. And he said, well, let me do the first hour for you. So he gets up there and he plays his opening song that he always plays, and it's Mustang Sally. And that was my first wife's name. And this is the first song at my wedding. Sometimes I think this stuff only happens to me. Are any other choices?
No, you can pick.
I don't do well on any of those.
You can pick another song.
No, you keep going. I like to be challenged because all three of those are kind of rock and roll songs that I was bad at.
I'm bad at everything.
Okay, so
Gary thinks my voice sucks, so you don't have to worry about outdoing me.
How much of the song do we sing?
Just like a couple of bars.
Okay, I can get away with that. All right, what'd you say? I should have known better. What the hell, right?
Yeah.
I
should have known better with a girl like you.
Hey.
That I would love everything that you do. And I do. Hey. And I do.
Okay, even harmony.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, the local newspaper had this feature. 25 years ago, this happened.
Okay, sure.
50 years ago, this happened. I used to, I can't wait till I can remember some of those things.
Wow.
Like I would say, I can't wait till I can say 50 years ago this happened and I remember it. Now, some people don't want to think about the past and they're worried about the future.
Right.
I mean, so what kind of a person are you? Somebody that looks forward and thinks about how much time they have left, or someone that can look back and relish what's happened in their life?
When I was still a competitive runner, I looked back all the time for encouragement. I would go out on runs and I'd be thinking about races that I lost most times that I could have changed the outcome. And I would actually go through it in my head. I think that is so strange.
That whole regret thing?
And when I started getting towards the end, because I raced until I was 40 something or other. And I used to use it really to encourage myself to stick with it and to try to then start looking forward to accepting where I was at that time, as opposed to trying to chase my times.
Yeah.
When I was deep in my 30s, I still thought I was going to have that year when I'm going to figure this all out.
It's going to
I'm
kick in.
I'm going to be great, That's interesting.
So, last question.
Yeah.
How much do you fear death?
Not at all. Not at all. Not a moment. I have to say that my mom died young. My dad lived to be a very cognizant 86. So I think I take some strength from that because my dad never ran a day in his life. And I think that's like my superpower insurance policy, even though I'm 30 pounds overweight now and not running very much. I don't. I think I have that Irish whistling by the graveyard expression. I talk about it all the time. I do. I reference it very publicly. I tell the people that work for me, well, as long as I'm alive, you guys, that kind of thing. I'm about to be 76. I think that's problematical. How the hell did that happen? I think with the pandemic, we all lost 2 years in there. But for me to think of what I used to think of 76, wow.
I forget how old I am. I'm 72.
Really? Good for you.
And it's like, I always think, I'm like 50.
We talk about staying engaged, in daily life. And so I don't really have time to do anything. I'm probably busier now than I've ever been in my life because I'm more engaged with more things.
Yeah.
I was lazy about the restaurant business for a bunch of years in there, where I put it way on the back burner and left it to other people. And now my wife and I are actually more engaged on a daily basis than we've been in years. And I think part of that was just that our kids are in their 20s now. And so we didn't have to be focused on that. So, on a daily basis, I get up and it's like, when am I going to work out? I'm going to read the newspapers. What's my first appointment? Am I going to the restaurants first, or do I have to go to a track meet, which I'm going to in a little while? Do I have a gig with the band? Do I have to work on my schedule? All that stuff. The only thing I miss is I wish I had a personal assistant. It would have made life a lot easier.
Yeah.
I work off a yellow pad. I'm so damn old. And my wife says sometimes, she say, you're into 3 columns now of stuff I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I get to cross you off today, as a matter of fact. You're on my yellow pad.
All right.
And when I get home, I'm going to put a line through that I did that. The stuff we actually have in common, our lives ran along in parallel lines.
Yeah.
With so many people in common. Because quite honestly, I forget about the Damn Sight Dinner Theater sometimes.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting time. I felt more creative during that period. I wrote a lot of songs during that period of time, and some of them were even decent. But there was a creative energy in that building that you all fueled too.
Yeah.
It was almost like a challenge. If you're going to be around those people, you want to keep up.
Well, next time I have a party, I'm inviting you.
Okay.
And we won't play 2 truths and a lie, but we will
please,
play.
God,
We will play a game.
But I'll explain Yahtzee to everybody.
I've never played Yahtzee.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it was an amazing time. And by the way, there is no nuance to Yahtzee, but we were looking for it.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. This has been great.
No, thank
It was
you.
a lot of fun.
Where else can you hear scintillating conversations with interesting people with ties to New Jersey except for here? You can't, and that's why you should subscribe and listen to every episode. And from now on, you'll be able to listen to Not So Famous in New Jersey every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks on Tuesday, I'll be posting either a brand new interview or one of my best of series. Stay tuned. I'm Lucille Osapio, and this is Not So Famous in New Jersey.